Daniel was always the type of person who drew attention wherever he went. His easy smile and charismatic personality naturally made everyone gravitate towards him. Since childhood, he was the center of attention at family gatherings, with his uncles and cousins enjoying his antics and jokes. But no one was closer to him than his cousin Jake. Jake was the opposite of Daniel in many ways. Quiet and introspective, he preferred observing people to being the center of attention. However, their difference in personalities was never an obstacle to their friendship. In fact, they complemented each other perfectly. While Daniel was the mastermind of adventures and games, Jake was the voice of reason that kept both of them out of serious trouble. Growing up together in a small town in the countryside, the cousins were inseparable. Their houses were only a few blocks apart, and they spent practically all their free time together. On weekends, it was common to see them fishing at the local lake or exploring trails in the nearby forest. At night, they would lie in the backyard of Daniel's house, watching the stars and dreaming about the future. As they grew up, their interests changed, but their friendship remained unshakable. In their teenage years, while Daniel became the star of the school's soccer team, Jake dedicated himself to his studies and the chess club. Even with different social circles, they always found time for each other. It was during this time that Emily came into their lives. She was a new girl in town. Smart and funny, she quickly became friends with Jake, the two sharing a love for literature and long conversations about cartoons. Daniel, on the other hand, was immediately captivated by Emily. Her laid-back and charming manner soon won the girl's heart, and they started dating. Jake, always loyal, was happy for the two of them. The years passed, and the trio remained united. When the time came to go to college, they made a pact to stay in touch, no matter what happened. And so they did, with frequent visits and long phone conversations. It was during one of those visits, during the summer holidays when they were 21, that everything changed. Daniel had organized a trip with some college friends, just the guys, to celebrate the end of the semester. Jake, who studied in another city, was invited to join the group. The trip started full of energy and good intentions. The guys rented a beach house, planning days of sun, surfing, and nights of fun. On the third day, they organized a party at the house, inviting people they had met on the beach. The loud music echoed through the house, blending with the sound of the ocean waves. The sea breeze mixed with the aroma of beer and snacks. Daniel, always the life of the party, was at the center of it all, telling jokes and making everyone laugh. Jake watched from afar, smiling at seeing his cousin in his element. As the night went on, Jake noticed that Daniel was drinking more than usual. His laughter grew louder, his jokes more daring. At a certain point, Jake saw Daniel openly flirting with a girl he had just met. Concerned, Jake approached his cousin. "Hey Dan, don't you think you've had enough to drink for today?" he said, trying to sound casual. Daniel looked at him with slightly unfocused eyes. "Relax, Jake. We're here to have fun. Don't be a buzzkill," Jake insisted, lowering his voice so only Daniel could hear. "Look, I know you're having fun, but remember Emily, your girlfriend? I think you're crossing the line here." For a moment, Daniel seemed to consider his cousin's words. But then, the girl came back with 2 more drinks, and the moment of clarity was gone. "Emily isn't here, Jake. What she doesn't know won't hurt her. Now, if you'll excuse me." Jake stood there, watching helplessly as Daniel walked away with the girl. A feeling of discomfort settled in his stomach, but he decided not to interfere further. After all, Daniel was an adult and responsible for his own choices. The next morning, regret was written all over Daniel's face. He walked around the house with slumped shoulders, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Jake found him sitting alone on the porch, staring at the sea with a vacant expression. "Dan, about last night?" Jake began, hesitantly. Daniel interrupted him, his voice hoarse. "I know, Jake. I messed up, but Emily doesn't need to know, right? It was a mistake. It won't happen again." Jake felt a knot form in his throat. "Daniel, you can't hide this from her. It's wrong. Emily deserves to know the truth." Daniel's eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and fear. "You're not going to tell her, Jake. This is between me and Emily. Stay out of my relationship." "I'm not going to tell her," Jake replied calmly. "But I think you should. Emily's my friend too, remember? I knew her even before you started dating. She deserves respect." Daniel stood up abruptly. "That's it, isn't it? You've always liked her. That's why you're so eager for me to tell?" Jake recoiled, hurt by the accusation. "It's not like that, Dan. I just want what's right. I promise I won't interfere, but I think you should really think about what you've done." The remaining days of the trip were tense. Daniel and Jake barely spoke to each other, and the rest of the group felt the heavy atmosphere between the cousins. When they returned home, Daniel seemed determined to forget the incident and move on as if nothing had happened, but fate had other plans. A few weeks after the trip, a photo started circulating on social media. It was a picture from the party at the beach house, and in the background, almost hidden, was Daniel embracing a girl. Emily saw the photo. Her heartbreak was evident in her red, swollen eyes when she confronted Daniel. There were no shouts or accusations, just a heavy silence and silent tears. With few words, she ended the relationship. Daniel, devastated and angry, immediately blamed Jake. "You did this. You posted that picture to harm me," he shouted over the phone. Jake, shocked by the accusation, tried to defend himself. "Dan, I swear it wasn't me. I promised I wouldn't get involved, remember?" But Daniel didn't want to listen. Weeks passed before the truth came to light. The picture had been posted by another friend in the group who didn't even know its significance. But it was too late. The damage was done, and the friendship between the cousins, once unshakable, was now in ruins. The years that followed were marked by silence between Daniel and Jake. They went their separate ways, moved to distant cities, living separate lives. Daniel immersed himself in his studies and then in work, becoming a successful executive. Jake, on the other hand, pursued a career in academia, finding success in books and research. 8 years passed in the blink of an eye. Daniel was in his apartment in the big city, reviewing some work documents on a Friday night when his phone rang. Seeing his mother's name on the screen, he smiled, feeling a wave of affection and longing. "Hi, Mom," he answered, leaning back in his chair. "Daniel, dear, it's so good to hear your voice." His mother's warm voice sounded on the other end of the line. "I have news for you." Daniel felt a twinge of concern. "Is everything okay, Mum? Did something happen?" "Oh, don't worry, it's nothing bad," she quickly reassured him. "Actually, it's good news. Your cousin Jake is getting married." Daniel was silent for a moment, surprised. Jake, getting married? For some reason, he had never imagined his quiet and reserved cousin taking this step. "Daniel, are you still there?" His mother's voice brought him back to reality. Yes, I'm here," he responded quickly. "That's unexpected." His mother continued, her voice full of hope. "Jake asked for your address. He wants to send you a wedding invitation." Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. After so many years without contact, Jake wanted to invite him to his wedding. Would it be a chance for reconciliation or just a family courtesy? "All right, Mum," he finally said. "You can give him my address." In the weeks that followed, Daniel found himself constantly thinking about Jake and the wedding. Memories of childhood and adolescence surfaced, reminding him of the friendship they had lost. He wondered how Jake was now, if he was still the same quiet and thoughtful young man he had known. When the invitation finally arrived, Daniel opened it. His eyes scanned the elegant paper, absorbing the information. Date, place, time. And then his heart stopped for a moment. The bride's name, Emily. Daniel let the invitation fall, feeling as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. Emily, his ex-girlfriend Emily. The girl he had hurt so deeply years ago. She was going to marry Jake. In the days that followed, Daniel oscillated between a roller coaster of emotions. Anger, sadness, jealousy, regret, all mingled in his chest, leaving him confused and exhausted. Part of him wanted to ignore the invitation, pretend he had never received it. Another part longed to go, to see Jake and Emily again, to try to mend the mistakes of the past. They're only inviting me to ridicule me, he thought in his darkest moments, imagining Jake and Emily laughing at him behind his back. But at other times, a more rational voice prevailed. Jake must have invited me to finally make peace, he reflected, remembering the friendship they once shared. Indecision consumed him until the last moment. On the eve of the wedding, Daniel still had not given a response. He spent the night awake, tossing and turning in bed, weighing the pros and cons. When the sun rose, softly illuminating his room, Daniel made his decision. He would go to the wedding. Not for Jake, not for Emily, but for himself. It was time to leave the past behind, to face his mistakes, and perhaps find a bit of peace. Daniel got dressed, choosing an elegant suit he hadn't worn in a long time. Looking at himself in the mirror, he practiced a smile, trying to appear more confident than he actually felt. The wedding venue was a beautiful garden on the outskirts of the city. When Daniel arrived, his heart was pounding so hard he feared everyone could hear it. He discreetly mingled with the other guests, recognizing some familiar faces but avoiding starting conversations. When the ceremony began, Daniel positioned himself at the back, wanting to go unnoticed. His eyes were fixed on Jake, who was waiting at the altar. His cousin looked nervous but happy, his eyes sparkling in a way Daniel didn't remember seeing before. And then, the wedding march began to play, and everyone turned to see the bride. Daniel felt his heart skip a beat when he saw Emily. She was radiant, her white dress flowing gracefully as she walked down the aisle. Her eyes were fixed on Jake, a smile lighting up her face. Watching the two exchange vows, Daniel felt a complex mix of emotions. There was a twinge of sadness, yes, a what if, echoing in his mind. But surprisingly, the predominant feeling was relief. Seeing Emily and Jake so happy together made Daniel realize that things had unfolded exactly as they should have. In a brief moment, Emily's eyes met Daniel's in the crowd. She smiled at him, a genuine and kind smile that seemed to say, "It's all right now." Daniel returned the smile, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. During the reception, Daniel kept a low profile, watching the festivities from a distance. He was about to leave when he felt a hand on his shoulder. Turning around, he found himself face to face with Jake. "Dan," Jake said, his voice trembling slightly. "You came." Daniel swallowed hard, trying to find the right words, but before he could speak, the words began to flow. "Jake, I'm sorry. For everything. For what I did to Emily. For accusing you unjustly. I was an idiot." Jake seemed surprised by the sudden confession. "Dan, But Daniel continued, "That episode, it made me reassess a lot of things in my life. I realized how vulnerable I was to alcohol, how it made me do things I regretted. It was a wake-up call, you know? Since then, I don't drink anymore." Jake looked at his cousin, his eyes filling with tears. "I never knew that, Dan. I'm sorry too. For not insisting more on keeping in touch, for letting our friendship fade away." The two cousins looked at each other for a long moment, years of hurt and regret passing between them. Then, almost simultaneously, they hugged, laughing and crying at the same time. "I missed you, you idiot," Jake murmured. "I missed you too, nerd," Daniel replied, his voice choked with emotion. When they pulled apart, Jake smiled. "You know, I invited you because I wanted this day to be a new beginning, not just for me and Emily, but for our whole family." Daniel nodded, feeling a wave of gratitude. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Jake." Later, as Daniel was pouring himself a soda at the bar, he sensed someone approaching. It was Emily, looking beautiful in her wedding dress. "Hello, Daniel," she said softly. "Emily," he replied, suddenly feeling nervous. "You look beautiful. Congratulations on the wedding." Emily smiled. "Thank you for coming. It means a lot to Jake. And to me, too." Daniel lowered his eyes, the guilt still weighing on his chest. "Emily, She raised her hand, gently interrupting him. "Daniel, it's okay. The past is the past. Actually, I wanted to thank you." He looked at her, confused. "Thank me?" Emily nodded. "Every person who comes into our life can teach us a lesson. You were part of my life, and I don't want to erase that. Our story taught me a lot about what I wanted and what I deserved in a relationship. It helped me become who I am today." Daniel felt tears forming in his eyes. "I never thought about it that way. Thank you, Emily. And I'm really sorry." "You're forgiven, Daniel," she said with a gentle smile. "Now go have fun. This is a celebration after all." As the night came to an end and Daniel prepared to leave, he felt as light as he hadn't felt in years. Looking back, he saw Jake and Emily dancing, lost in each other's eyes. He saw family members and friends laughing and chatting, and for the first time in a long while he felt part of it all again. As he drove back home, Daniel reflected on the day. He had arrived at the wedding carrying the weight of years of regrets and hurt. Now he was leaving with a light heart and full of hope. Daniel smiled to himself. Maybe, he thought, happy endings were not just for fairy tales. Sometimes they happened in real life too. And with that comforting thought, he moved forward, eager to see what the future held. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.